Hello, folks. Welcome to another episode of Happy Fairy Tale Story Time. Today's short story is written by 8-year-old Mikhail Abri, titled The Blurk Friendship Dance. Okay, let's get into this. Blurks, hundreds of them. Pouring from the woods, their cheerful tunes swelling with intensity. But they weren't singing about potatoes. They swarmed, tiny blue devils with eyes like ice. The townsfolk, caught off guard, stood no chance. Their screams were swallowed by the morning air. Their small size was deceptive. At first glance they seemed harmless, almost cute. But beneath that innocent exterior lay a ferocity unmatched by any other creature. Their eyes, once filled with curiosity, now burned with an insatiable hunger for destruction. Each Blurk was impossibly strong. Their strength defied logic, as if they were imbued with some dark magic. They could lift objects many times their size and weight, their tiny muscles rippling with power. It was a sight both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Wielding melee weapons and firearms, cracking skulls, tearing limbs, even some with bare hands. They cackled with glee. The joyful singing became chanting, with the smacking sound of cleaved flesh mixed with the sickening crunch of bone, creating a symphony of chaos. Blood splattered across their tiny faces, but they didn't flinch. Instead, they revelled in the carnage, their laughter echoing through the air. No playful mischief here, this was calculated brutality. They attacked with a purpose, each strike aimed to maim or incapacitate, if not kill. There was no hesitation, no mercy. Their eyes, once filled with innocence, now gleamed with a cold, ruthless determination. They were no longer the playful creatures of legend. They had become something far more sinister. The townsfolk fought back, of course. Armed with whatever they could find, they stood their ground, determined to protect their homes and loved ones. Pitchforks, shotguns, and makeshift weapons were all they had, but they fought with a courage born of desperation. They knew the odds were against them, but they refused to give up. But pitchforks and shotguns were useless against the onslaught. The Blurks were relentless as the gaps in their numbers were quickly filled. For every Blurk that fell, 2 more seemed to take its place. The villagers were overwhelmed, their defences crumbling under the relentless assault. It was a losing battle, and they knew it. The Blurks swarmed their victims, tearing them apart, leaving trails of blood and flesh in their wake. The ground was littered with the remains of those who had tried to stand against them. The air was thick with the stench of death, and the once peaceful village was now a scene of utter devastation. The sweet smell of breakfast was replaced by the metallic tang of blood. Many Blurks were deep purple, if not completely red, saturated with human blood and biomass. The village, once filled with laughter and life, was now a silent graveyard. The Blurks had left their mark, a brutal reminder of their power and savagery. And as the sun rose, casting its light on the carnage, it was clear that nothing would ever be the same again. Then the true horror began. It was a night like no other, where the air was thick with an unsettling silence, and the moon cast an eerie glow over the desolate landscape. The once vibrant town of Harmony Creek had become a ghostly shadow of its former self, a place where nightmares roamed freely. The Blurks weren't just killing, they were repurposing. The villagers who once lived peaceful lives were now subjected to unimaginable horrors. Their bodies were no longer their own, twisted and manipulated into abominable forms that defied the natural order. Using a grotesque combination of technology and dark magic, the Blurks had discovered a way to merge flesh with metal, creating abominations that were neither fully human nor machine. These creations were a testament to their twisted ingenuity, a blend of organic and inorganic that defied comprehension. They fused metal and flesh and climbed inside to take over each body. The process was excruciating, a symphony of pain and suffering that echoed through the empty streets. The victims' screams were a haunting reminder of the horrors that had befallen them, their voices lost in the cacophony of machinery and dark magic. Victims became vehicles, their bodies twisted into grotesque vessels of machinery. They moved with a jerky, unnatural motion, their limbs controlled by the Blurk's dark will. Each step they took was a painful reminder of their lost humanity, a dance of agony and despair. The worst part? The victims were still aware. Trapped within their new mechanized bodies, they could feel every twist of metal, every surge of dark magic that coursed through their veins. Their minds were prisons, their thoughts a constant reminder of the horrors they endured. Trapped inside their new bodies, forced to watch the carnage. Slaves to the Blurks piloting them inside their hollowed torsos. They became biomechanical mechs. These once human beings were now vehicles of destruction, their every move dictated by the Blurk's malevolent intent. Their screams were sometimes silent, lost in the whirring gears and hissing steam that now powered their every move. The sound of machinery drowned out their cries, a constant reminder of their new, horrific existence. The air was filled with the scent of oil and blood, a sickening combination that permeated every corner of the town. Harmony Creek was no more. The once peaceful village had been transformed into a nightmare, a place where the boundaries between life and death, flesh and metal, had been irrevocably blurred. In its place, a charnel house of meat and metal. The town was now a grotesque monument to the Blurk's dark ambitions, a place where the line between man and machine had been obliterated. The once vibrant community was now a twisted, nightmarish landscape, a testament to the horrors that had been unleashed upon it. Sheriff Brody, holed up in the police station, watched the carnage through his security monitors. His hand trembled as he reached for the phone. There was only one person who might understand this madness, one person who might be able to stop it. Carl Gommel, the Blurk's nemesis, always portrayed as the villain. But what if they had it wrong? What if Carl wasn't evil, but desperate, trying to warn the world about the true nature of the Blurks? Brody could only pray he wasn't too late. Carl Gommel, villain or savior? The question has haunted many for centuries. Is he the dark sorcerer who seeks to destroy, or is there more to his story than meets the eye? The line crackled to life. A gruff voice answered, tinged with bitterness and weary resignation. It was a voice that carried the weight of countless battles and endless nights of plotting. "What do you want?" It was Carl. His tone was sharp, almost cutting, as if he had been disturbed from some deep, dark contemplation. Brody took a deep breath. He knew this conversation could change everything. The fate of his town, and perhaps the world, hung in the balance. My town, the Blurks. They're not like in the cartoons. They're killing everyone. His voice trembled, the weight of his words sinking into the silence that followed. Silence. Then a dry chuckle. It was a sound that sent shivers down Brody's spine, a sound that hinted at dark secrets and hidden truths. So they've finally revealed their true nature to the world. Carl's voice was laced with a strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow. What took them so long? Carl's voice was devoid of humour. It was a question that carried the weight of years of waiting, of watching, of knowing. It was the sound of a man who had seen too much, warned too often, only to be ignored. A man who had been painted as a villain, but perhaps in the end was the only one who truly understood the danger. "Can you stop them?" Brody pleaded, his voice hoarse with desperation. Carl sighed, a long, weary sound. "Perhaps. But you won't like it. Death would be a mercy compared to what they're doing." Brody's blood ran cold. What could be worse than the carnage he was witnessing? Carl's next words confirmed his fears. "They're not just killing, Sheriff, they're building an army of metal and flesh, and your town is just the beginning." The phone clattered to the floor. Brody stared at the carnage on the monitors. The Blurks, their laughter echoing through the silent station, continued their work. Harmony Creek was gone. In its place stood a testament to their cruelty, a monument to their true nature, a town of screaming metal powered by the souls of the damned, piloted by entranced Blurks. And it was spreading. Inside their metal and meat prisons, the townsfolk screamed. They begged for death, for oblivion, anything to escape the torment. But their pleas were lost in the whirring machinery, drowned out by the clanging gears and hissing steam and Blurk pilots. that were now their only companions. They were prisoners in their own bodies, forced to watch the world burn, forced to witness the end of everything they held dear. And the worst part? It was only just beginning. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the ruined town, the Blurks gathered. Their work was far from over. Harmony Creek was just the first domino. The world was vast, ripe for the taking, and they had just the army to do it. The blue twilight settled over the land, a harbinger of the darkness to come. The age of the Blurks had begun, and it would be written in blood and steel. As Brody stood there, grappling with the grim reality laid bare by Carl Gamel, a new sound pierced the air, a distant rumbling, growing louder and more ominous with each passing second. He turned towards the source, his heart pounding in his chest. The Mupples had arrived. Unlike the cheerful creatures of childhood tales, these Mupples were armed and ready for battle. They carried a strange mineral-based concoction, a substance so potent that it dissolved the Blurks into a gelatinous blue goo on contact. The ground shook as they marched into town, their eyes steely with determination. The ensuing battle was swift and brutal. Blurks, once the terror of the town, were reduced to puddles of blue sludge, turning the bloody landscape into an unworldly purple. For a brief moment it seemed the nightmare was over. The townspeople dared to hope, to believe that their saviours had come. But hope was fleeting. The Mupples, now the new rulers of the town, revealed their true intentions. They turned the once peaceful community into a radish-hash cartel hub, controlling the citizens through shock and awe. Any act of defiance was met with unspeakable torture and public execution. Horrors that exceed what any human has done to another. Sometimes they just randomly picked victims to remind the community of their newfound power. Brody watched in horror as the town fell into a new kind of darkness. The people lived in constant fear, their lives ruled by the iron fist of the Mupples. Anything was better than being turned into hollow biomechs, but this new reality was a far cry from the freedom they had once known. Everyone lived miserably ever after. The end. Well then. Wow. Nice story, Mikhail. This concludes our episode of Happy Fairy Tale Storytime. Have fun, don't die. Or get trapped in existential torment. And remember, just do what the Mupples say and don't attract too much attention. My God, I need a shower.